Live.
Nice.
All right, Udi, welcome back to the Magic Internet Money Podcast, round 2. And
thank you.
You're sporting your Bitcoin all-time high look with your Neo sunglasses and your fancy John Carvalho beard.
Just to be recognizable, really.
That's what we all need a recognizable.
People don't recognize me without the sunglasses.
Right. So I don't know if anybody's even watching this. Let me check my. Let me check my stream.
Probably not. We just started speaking a minute ago.
Oh, I got a comment already. Okay, maybe someone's watching. Well, hopefully it's up. So I didn't do yet a podcast episode on the celebratory Bitcoin 20,000 all-time high. So this is the first podcast that people listening to me will be hearing that the price is up over 20,000. I'm sure they already know by now.
Oh, is it over 20,000?
Yay!
That's cool.
It doesn't it feel good though? Actually, the day of, what did it feel like to you?
Yeah, it felt very good. I mean, we're all waiting for it we've been waiting for it for 3 years, but we've all been like on edge for a few weeks at least, right? Everyone was expecting it to happen. So yeah, I think it was clearly a big release for everyone when it happened, right? You can see it on the charts too.
The thing that, to me, it was like I'm trying to balance both the the investment side of Bitcoin and also the value side of Bitcoin, like why it's really value aside from just as an investment. So I try not to celebrate the price movements too much because I don't want to contribute to the FOMO. Like I don't want people to just sell their house and buy Bitcoin and like get wrecked if the price drops. But to me, the big movement that I really felt equally.
Well, a house is just not a good investment, right? Like Bitcoin is a better investment than real estate.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that for sure. But I like to tell people to take proper risk management strategies.
True,
like maybe like get a second mortgage on your house and put a little bit of the value of your house in Bitcoin, but don't sell like your whole entire house and all your savings and just buy Bitcoin. That might work out for the occasional Bitcoin family, but not everybody.
It worked out very well for them.
It certainly has. You did it at the right time.
You just have to wait, right? Because you usually instantly regret it, and then you have to wait a few years. And you can do that.
It's actually fun. Have the conservative strategy of like don't invest more than you can afford to lose, and like if you can't swallow a 80% drawdown and sit in it for like the shit for 2 years, then you shouldn't be in Bitcoin as a big percentage of your portfolio. But then that's what I do. I'm like pretty much majority of my net worth is in Bitcoin and swinging up and down all the time. So I don't know. What do you think that is? Or what do you think it's just like people don't want to be held responsible for the losses that other people might suffer?
You mean why we say that? Why we say don't invest more than you can lose?
Yeah, and then but then we invest all of our money into it and sell our houses and our cars and everything.
Well, it takes time to kind of build up that durability, right? The like if you jump, I don't know. I've only ever been myself. I haven't been anyone else. But at least for me, I believe that if I try to, kind of jump right into all in Bitcoin the moment I found out about it, then I would probably have sold it all very quickly, Like just because the gains, either the gains or the losses would have confused me.
Yeah.
And you become, you're afraid if you're afraid whenever the price moves, then you're going to have a very bad time. So you don't want that, because then you're bound to make mistakes. So I think that's a good reason to not invest more than you can lose, right? Because, and of course it goes, there are a lot of parameters in there. Like if you were young, if you're 18 and somehow managed to save up some money, then
throw it all in Bitcoin.
I mean, you probably throw a lot, right?
You have plenty of time to earn back your money that you lost, most likely.
And even, that was an interesting, because for someone who's 18-year-old, let's say you're 18, but you're well off. I mean, let's say you have a very good job. I don't know, you're in tech, you have a good job, you have a bright future ahead of you, which usually means you can probably get a good loan with good terms. Then I don't know, should you do that? Should you bet some of your future income on Bitcoin? Because that's something you could do reasonably. And Vitalik recently said that's a huge mistake and don't do that. And of course, immediately after he tweeted that, Bitcoin proceeded to pump 25% in a day. That's unlucky. But I mean, I get his point, right? But you have to also consider, like, maybe it's a wise financial decision to make a reasonable bet on part of your future income if you think that now is the good time. By the way, I'm not saying that now is the good time. I don't know, but
Well, like you said, it depends on your situation.
Yeah.
And like your age, mostly, your investment horizon, all that. But for me, it was like, we know that now that Bitcoin's in the all-time high, this is basically from here on forward, it's the most likely chance that we're going to have another crazy bull run, because now the all-time high news is out, and all the media is going to start putting out all these headlines about Bitcoin and all this stuff. So we know that this is the next phase of mass adoption starting as soon as the all-time high got shattered. And it sucks because we've been telling everybody for 2-3 years in the bear market to buy Bitcoin, slowly allocate, dollar cost average in. And now I'm getting inundated with calls and messages from people that are like, okay, now I'm ready to put $100,000 in Bitcoin now that the all-time high has been breached. So we just know that's the way that market cycles go. And thankfully,
hey, at least they're not buying Ripple, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, they're not like, it's not a market like Ripple where it's regulated by the SEC or something. They can come in and what's it down like 60 or no, like 40% or 30% or something right now, if it's not even delisted by the time this goes out.
Yeah.
Well, with Bitcoin,
people were buying up Ripple up to a few days ago, So
yeah. I mean, they I think it was you or somebody just put out that screenshot of that newsletter that they sent out, how they're trying to do like a stimulus package for Americans. They're giving away.
That was a phishing email. That was fake. That was a phishing email.
Was it?
Yeah.
I swear, like, they're so scammy that I thought that was legitimate.
Yeah, that was fake.
They have enough Ripple to be able to print for everybody in the United States, from their treasury. So I thought maybe they were trying to like build some cloud or something. But yeah, makes sense. It sounds scammy. It is scammy.
It was actually very well executed.
Yeah.
As far as phishing scams go. But yeah.
Well, with Bitcoin hitting the all-time high, I'm still super hopeful that we're going to go in another cycle, that Bitcoin goes to like $100,000, $200,000 over the next, end of this cycle. Maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 2 years. But as that Bitcoin idea and the narrative of allocation to Bitcoin spreads amongst wealthier people, it's going to attract the same sort of attention it did the last time. And I don't feel bad about recommending people buy Bitcoin and still continue to buy no matter what the cost. I'm buying every day for the last, ever since all-time high was breached, I'm buying Bitcoin every day, because I'm like, I think of my portfolio in buckets, like a generational bucket of like, my heirs are going to get this, I'm never going to touch it. And then there's like my retirement bucket, which is, I may sell some if it goes to $100,000-$200,000, like, just to reallocate my portfolio. And then I have a short-term bucket that's a couple of years where I'm like, oh, I know it's a good buy right now, and I'm just going to hold this for a couple of years, and it's just like a short-term investment. I don't know, like, how do you think about Bitcoin in terms of your investing?
I just buy them and never sell them.
That's the way to do it.
Just never. Then
just never.
Beg for donations in the street to eat.
The Bitcoin. The Bitcoin. I don't want to be. Try not to be offensive. I don't want to offend any religions, but
Right.
Kind of sounds like a way that some people make their money. But that is a good strategy. Just buy, never sell. Just get
That's
donations
it.
for people.
Just say because you're poor,
I'll fund
you can't
it.
eat. You have zero cash in your bank account.
Yeah, because everybody says Bitcoin isn't money, right? So you might as well really take that in and say, oh, I guess it's not for spending. I guess it's not for money. So give me some. Give me some money.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I don't really do short-term stuff.
Except
I
for
view it as
shorting.
yeah, it's I just a tip for people, don't believe the things that I tweet about. Just generally. Just don't assume that it's true.
Okay.
Just because
That's
I tweeted it.
Good disclaimer. But you've been accurate with your calls, relatively. I mean, when we did the first podcast episode back in January, February this year, we went all through the reasons why DeFi is not. Ethereum is over extending themselves, I guess, consensus, and the price was kind of from where we released the podcast to where it is now. It's pretty much exactly the same, and I think there was a pump like while I was editing the podcast.
Look, I got stomped on my predictions in your podcast, basically, because I said things like, I said DeFi will disappear, and like the opposite happened, right? DeFi became huge, and I said that ETH will well. To be honest, I did say that I'll become bullish on ETH if some things happen, and they did happen. But I was very bearish on that episode, and generally what happened afterwards was not bearish at all. I do think, however, the DeFi stuff it's funny because when we did talk back then, DeFi was something else entirely. Like they use the same word, but it was entirely something else. Like there was no farming going on. There was no none of that. It was basically DAI and
Curve, maybe
Compound. I think Curve was just starting. If I recall correctly. I mean, I don't know how long it existed, but as far as adoption goes, I think it was just starting. And so there wasn't any of what people call DeFi now, and I would argue that DeFi now is something entirely different. The things I talked about back then were that people are not going to be interested in, taking loans on Ethereum, and that was true. They don't care about that one bit. They cared about farming. So, yeah, I think in that sense it was very accurate. Like the vision of DeFi back then is basically dead. Like it doesn't exist anymore. No one is even as a joke. No one's gonna launch something that looks like a DeFi a year ago, right? Where you just no incentives. You just if you want, you can take a loan. Who cares, right?
Right.
So the DeFi is dead, and I think that I think it was crazy, and I think it was obviously just a huge Ponzi scheme, but it worked, right? As a Ponzi scheme, it did a good job. So you have to give him that.
Yeah, it's like when we were talking, and by the way, I don't think that many of your predictions on my podcast were off. I think maybe you had gone on a couple other people's podcasts and you were maybe saying a bit more bearish stuff, but on internet money, you weren't too bad. I think everything that you said pretty much held up in that it's not decentralized, and it's still not decentralized, and that consensus in these centralized companies were kind of like holding up the price and holding up the interest with like incentivizing everything, with paying people to do things.
Right.
And that, yes, it bubbled up like crazy in the summer, and I think that saved Ethereum and consensus, the price rising, because they were like you had suggested, they should lay off a bunch of people because they're burning through their ETH treasury so fast. They ended up doing that,
Yeah.
And then the pump happened. And at the same time, it was like, I really do think that the Silicon Valley VCs are like really pouring money into trying to save this because they've got so much invested in DeFi protocols and ETH tokens directly. And like Andreessen Horowitz raised like something like $450 million shortly after we did our podcast. And after, you know, everybody was really getting bearish on Ethereum DeFi, they're just pouring money into it. So like they came up with all these incentives, like you lock up your stable coins and then you get these other tokens, and then that is an APY percentage of 50% a year. Well, I can get 50% interest on my money. So that attracts more people and that are like seeing the shiny casino lights. And yeah, it muddied it up for sure. It definitely saved ETH DeFi and the price of ETH. But even still, with all that, it crashed in September and October. A lot of people got wrecked. Even the people that say, "Oh, ETH outperformed Bitcoin," or DeFi outperformed Bitcoin. Look at Yearn; it's up 1,000% or whatever. But if you look at the average DeFi investor, they got a smart contract hack or an exploit, or like they lost money in any of these 16 or 17 different protocol exploits or whatever. I still don't, you know, I still don't think there's any real fundamental value in DeFi.
Oh no. I think that the thing that is called DeFi today has zero fundamental value. It's pretty obvious. It's a Ponzi scheme. I mean, there's no like even the biggest DeFi proponents will agree that it's a Ponzi scheme. That's what it is. Or you can say it's a cool Ponzi scheme. It has interesting properties. Maybe you can make money off of it if you're smart. I'm not saying you can't. Probably not now. I don't know. Maybe. But it is a Ponzi scheme. It's a game. It's a Ponzi game. Mm-hmm. So some people like that. That's great. But I mean, they designed it that way. Like, what else can you say? That's what it is.
Yeah, like I do think that there is some interesting technology in the DeFi ecosystem, but they're all tied to these Ponzi tokens, and they have all these pyramid scheme like incentive structures that incentivize developers to commit like basically like boiler room activity and like pre-sell their tokens around and then dump them on Coinbase or dump them on Uniswap or whatever. It just incentivizes immoral usury like behavior, which to me, like, it's funny. Those guys just came out with that book, Thank God for Bitcoin. Jimmy Song and those guys, they're talking about like the moral, like, spiritual case for why Bitcoin is important. I suggested they write a sequel called Usurers Use Ethereum. all about how the money changers are using Ethereum. What do you think? You want to write that book with me?
I feel like I deal too much with shitcoins already. Sorry, altcoins. I said I will stop saying shitcoins. I want to try saying altcoins instead.
Altcoins, okay.
Yeah, because it seemed to piss them off even more. So,
well, what do you think, Udi? Is it possible that we can? Because Bitcoiners say this all the time, like, oh, if anything interesting comes from altcoins, we can just adopt it in Bitcoin, and maybe, like, I do think that the use case of decentralized exchange of value is interesting. Like, when I first dabbled with Uniswap, I was a hater for a long time of DeFi, and I'm like, okay, after the episode with you, I did one with Amir, I did one with a couple of my friends. I'm like, I gotta really check this out. It looks on the surface like it's a big Ponzi scam, but everybody's saying it's cool and it's useful.
No, Uniswap isn't a scam.
Uniswap, the idea to be able to, like,
do the token. I'm putting the token aside. Definitely before the token existed.
My mind changed when they launched that token, because that just showed me the same exact reasons why I was arguing that everything on Ethereum is all about getting rich, and insiders and VCs getting paid like hundreds of millions of dollars for their technology. And dumping it on the retail investors for these tokens that aren't really even needed. I was always using Tornado Cash and Uniswap as the examples of, look, there's a bright shining star here. They build technology that is useful, whether or not it's the Ponzi swapping is useful. It's like the technology is pretty cool. It's working at a scale. And then they dumped out like billions of dollars worth of tokens on everybody and kept a whole bunch of them for themselves. Like, the majority of the value creation went to the VCs and stuff. So it just made me think, oh, great, more like proving the point that Ethereum from the top down culture is all about getting rich off of printing tokens and selling it to people.
Yeah, it's really all about that. And you see, you go to a project's website, and like the biggest call to actions that they have will be to direct you to buy their token, which is
Here's our
ridiculous.
Uniswap link.
Can you imagine like going to apple.com, and instead of seeing like links to iPhone and whatever, they'll send you over to E-Trade to buy their stock? Like, that's insane. It's absolutely insane, because they don't create value. They can't, like, that's the only thing they can show you, how to buy their token. So but I think if I'm trying to take the contrarian view here, the contrarian view, maybe, like for American VCs, for VCs in the West, they have a problem, because if they want to play the crypto game, because the people who are making the big money are like Binance and the rest of the exchanges. I'm not going to list them all, but there are a few exchanges that are doing very well and controlling their piece of the market very closely. And they can't really play that game because of US regulations. I mean, they can invest in other companies, but they don't have an advantage there. So their kind of only move is to do all of those pseudo decentralized things where they can continue to try to confuse regulators for a while they sell all of the tokens and then shut down the project because no one cares about it anymore. That's like their strategy, just pump more and more of those projects that don't have an intrinsic value, but you can sell tokens, and then just do it again and again and again. That's their only move. Like, they don't have other moves. They can't go and start an exchange with 100x leverage. They just can't do that. That's not an option. So they do the next best thing, which is the inferior product, which is what DeFi has. And it's not even decentralized. It just looks decentralized, and it'll take a while before regulators catch up. And they will, by the way. They always do. But so far, it's going to take them a while.
There's always like this sub narrative about the Freerider problem. Like, people that come into the space now, there's going to be billions of people that come into crypto, and they're not going to enter through the funnel of Bitcoin only. They're going to come in to Google Bitcoin, or they have a friend that is owns a crypto fund or whatever, right? And they're going to be seeing from fresh eyes, look at this big space. It's wide, it's expansive. It's not just money, it's smart contracts, it's whatever else there is. I'm sure there's going to be more things they come up with. And they will typically not come at this from the Austrian economic foundational principles about money, and they'll be more like entrepreneurs. They'll just be like, oh, I want to make some money. Like, this is a space that I can allocate to make some money in.
Yeah.
And it's they look at, people will say that Bitcoin has a Freerider problem because of all the people that are holding Bitcoin. If this entrepreneur comes in and builds a second layer solution for Bitcoin, then all the Bitcoin holders that aren't contributing to this technology with their code aren't going to be, putting in the same fair amount of work. And that's why most people that are entrepreneurs will go to something like ETH, or because Consensus is like giving out grants and doing consulting and attracting talent like that. So it's our job, I feel like, as Bitcoiners, to present the moral case for why Bitcoin really is the only money token like that has the value of, or will retain the value of decentralization, censorship resistance, privacy. Hopefully we improve the privacy. It's better than the dollar. It's better than stablecoins. it's better than ETH for privacy, but it's not as good as like it could be.
Yeah.
But
can't. I see what you're saying, and you can't have like a chunk of gold try to compete with a binary option, right? Like, you can't say, what we wanted is digital equivalent of gold. and that's what we have. And that means like there are some things it's good for, and there are some things it's not very good for. Like it's not going to be great if what you're trying to do is to extract value from a bunch of rich people who are not very smart. If that's your goal, then Bitcoin is probably not going to give it to you. You might be successful in the Ethereum ecosystem, though. Like that's. I'm not saying that if you're going to do that, you'll fail. You might be successful because in Ethereum you do have a bunch of rich people who are not necessarily very smart, so they are very likely to give you their money. So yeah, I'm not going to tell anyone not to do that. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. But you can't have everything, right? If Bitcoin is designed to be like a digital equivalent of gold, that's what it's good at. It's not going to be attractive to a ton of other things, and that's fine. I don't see any problem with that. I'm fine with, like, you're saying entrepreneurs, but they're not like. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that I value, I look up to. None of them are in the Ethereum space. I'm sorry, they're not. Like they're building things probably outside of crypto. Most of them. Some of them are doing Bitcoin related stuff. Most of them probably doing things outside of crypto, and that's great. I don't think that if you're building, I don't think it's the right kind of people that you want to attract. Now it's kind of a blanket statement. Obviously, some people, it would be awesome to have them on our side, and currently they're not on our side; they're the other side. But I think, like in general, in the broad sense, I don't think Bitcoin can be appealing to people who are just looking for, pump and dumps. We're not going to be able to appeal to those people.
Yeah, it seems like those people, and they're not. It's just not because you're motivated by money doesn't mean you're not a good person.
True.
It just means that you're not thinking about the same values or the same things about money as people that are into gold or Bitcoin or real estate or whatever are into, and they're more likely thinking about it from a investor's mindset, like a startup entrepreneur or something like that. Like move fast, break things. I'm gonna go like raise some money for my startup, and I'm gonna then issue stock and so.
Yeah, but it's also very short-term thinking, right? Because you can have, in most fields, you'll have some entrepreneurs who try to build something for the short term, and you'll have some entrepreneurs who try to really build something out for the long term. Sometimes they'll try to corner the market to really own some market, and some people will say that that's maybe immoral. I don't know, but I'm not really talking about morals here. I'm talking about what are you trying to do. And it seems like usually in Ethereum, what you're trying to do is build something for the very short term, like months. And that's just, I don't find that very interesting. Like you can like which project in Ethereum remained interesting for more than a year? Like very, very, very few. I think Uniswap is an example of one, but the rest, because people were talking about Compound, MakerDAO, but now if they don't change massively, no one's going to care about them anymore.
Like MakerDAO or whatever DAO, whatever it is going to come up against, and this is something we talked about back in our last podcast when the total value deposited, I'm not going to say locked, it's just deposited, when that was much lower, it was just not big enough for the regulators to even care about and look at. And now you see the regulators going after BitMEX, and now there's a lot of money getting locked up in DeFi, and they're going to go after the companies running these DeFi protocols for sure. We just had today all this news come out about, or yesterday, the Ripple getting fined and sued by the SEC because it's a security. It's the XRPTheSecurity, not the standard, and the price is getting wrecked. And do you know what's going to happen there? Like, have you looked into the 71-page document yet? Like, what's the consensus is what's going to happen with Ripple?
I have definitely not read the document. I've seen some of the esteemed lawyers on crypto Twitter have a bunch of summaries on that. I've seen some of them. I think that, look, I'm not a lawyer. That's really not my expertise, but it seems like very much like in the DAO case, the original DAO, if you remember that, when they they released a long document about the DAO, and it was kind of, I don't know what the official name was for it, but there was like no action that they were taking, but they were just kind of showing, because the DAO was long gone by then, like it was years after it collapsed. But they were kind of saying, we know what was going on. They had like this very long description of everything that was going on there and everything that, in their opinion, might have made it a security. They decided they're not going to do anything about it because it was long over. But it was like, guys, we're paying attention. We're not stupid. We're seeing what's going on. And I think in this case with Ripple, it's very clear that they know what's going on. Like they're not fooled. All of those things that Bitcoiners were raging about, sometimes irrationally, to be honest, but raging about that Ripple is doing in a scammy way and whatever, then I think very clearly the SEC is aware, at least, of all of those things. There was no, as far as I understand, there was no like criminal allegation there. Like it's a civil case. There's no allegation of fraud or anything like that.
I think they did actually say that it was securities fraud because they sold like $700 million worth of Ripple onto the public market.
I think so. I don't think, if I might be wrong on this, but if I understand correctly, it wasn't classified as securities fraud, but as just a sale of unregistered securities, but not a fraud. Like it's not. So there's a difference there, and
we don't know what the fallout yet is. It's just they didn't say like, Chris Larson, Brad Garlinghouse, we're going to take you away, going to jail. You have to shut this thing down. There's nothing like definitive like that yet, but maybe that might happen.
I mean, look, anything could happen, but as far as I understand, right now this is a civil case and not a criminal case. So they could end up with a big fine, but there's no like jail time on the line. That's my understanding.
So we would have known by now, like they would have been arrested already and they'd be in custody. Like it would have happened with the release of the case. So it's not likely that's going to happen. It's more likely going to be financial penalties. But you know what they did actually a couple of times with these securities, they forced them to comply with the laws. So Air Swap was one of them where they allowed them to keep the AST or whatever it was called token going, but it had to be registered and traded on regulated exchanges, which means it's delisted everywhere.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's what's going to happen with Ripple. It has to be treated as a security, and the XRP token has to only trade on regulated exchanges, and that will then clearly define that these are different assets. Bitcoin and Ripple are not at all like the same thing, and it will no longer have the confusion in the market for new people coming in thinking, oh, well, Bitcoin's too expensive. I'm just going to get some Ripple. It's only 40 cents. Yeah. It could go to 10,000. It can go to 20,000.
Yeah. I think that, Ripple people are not going to like this, but I think that in all likelihood, Ripple is truly dead. It can't exist as a security, right? That's not, as a security, it's useless. Its only use was, claiming that it's like Bitcoin. And if they're not able to do that, then it's over. I think their only chance is to maybe convince the court that they're not a security. I wouldn't bet on their odds there, but I don't know, maybe. I think that, I've seen some people say, and again, really, I'm not a lawyer. All I'm saying here is just common sense, and I could be completely off. But I've seen a lot of people saying that, well, it's like the EOS case where they just got a small slap over the wrist of a few $1 million compared to the $4 billion allegedly raised, which is just nothing. And if it's something like that, then it's a joke. And they were allowed to continue trading of EOS as if it's not a security. So I don't think it's the same here. The allegations seem pretty severe, and I think it's more comparable to the Telegram case.
Right.
People forgot about that, but the Telegram thing was pretty bad. It just killed it, right? They just realized it's dead. So I think it's going to be very similar.
There's been a
And
bunch of those actually where the SEC has come out, find the creator of it, 200,000, 400,000. In EOS's cases, it was 20, 40 million, something like that. But again, 4 billion they raised, 20 million's a slap. But the smaller ones, they mostly just died off. They did, because once they're classified as securities, the only people who are trading them are like breaking the securities laws.
Well, that's true. The big win for EOS was that it wasn't classified as a security. That was the big win for EOS. The money isn't even the most important thing there. Their goal was to make sure that it's not a security, and then it's a free pass forever, basically. So
and even still, it's still wrecked against Bitcoin and dollars.
Oh
it's still wrecked.
Yeah.
And now EOS has, like, Block 1 has 140,000 Bitcoin in their treasury. And they've been buying Bitcoin with all those billions of dollars that they raised. I don't know how we get into the situation where a company like Block 1 has that much Bitcoin and they're so adversarial to the Bitcoin network.
People just gave it away, dude. In 2017, people were really dumb. They just gave away the Bitcoin.
They gave their ETH away too, and they just sold their ETH for Bitcoin, which was a smart move.
Of course.
Block 1 made the right call there. Dumped their
because they knew what was going on. I mean, as possibly the biggest ICO in the history of time, they knew what ICOs look like, and they knew what's coming. They knew that they're all are going to dump their ETH. So, they were in a very good position to know what's coming to ETH at the time. But, Ripple, if I'm going back to Ripple, I will say that, like, what no one has been, I haven't seen anyone saying that very loudly, at least. Like, Ripple has been preparing for this moment for, 10 years now. They knew it was coming. It's not like there's a shock. They knew. They've been probably in talks with the SEC for years. I don't know how those things work, but I would assume they've been in some form of talks for a long time. And obviously, they've been gearing up by hiring everyone they can. Now, I would assume that the ideal scenario for them would have been that, nothing is even filed, or that they reach a favorable compromise or whatever. But I think they were ready for this possibility. And you see the entire path that they took with rewriting history and saying that Ripple is not the name of the coin, and how the coin even came to be. They have like this new age theory of how it
was discovered.
Existence. Yes, it was discovered
like public good.
Yeah. So and they prepared for this moment. They were preparing for trial, I think. So I think they're going to give a fight. It's not going to be like it's not going to end in some settlement in a couple of days. It's going to be probably a long fight.
Like Telegram or like Kin, the Kick token, because they tried to fight the SEC and tried to appeal to the virtues of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and say, like, this is an attack on the whole space. This is an attack on Bitcoin. And like, meanwhile, all the Bitcoiners are like, Kin is not anything like Bitcoin. XRP is not anything like Bitcoin. I don't know if these guys actually think that, like, they're going to attract some defense from Bitcoiners, or if they're just, are they that delusional that they really do think that it's that it's the same type of an asset as Bitcoin?
I don't think any Bitcoiners are gonna, any hardliner Bitcoiners are gonna help them out, but there are definitely gonna be some companies on their side. Like, if I'm Binance, then I really want Ripple to win this. If I'm Tron, then I probably really want Ripple to win this. Like, they're gonna have some people on their side.
Yeah, didn't Justin Sun tweet out something about how we all have to stand together and like defend against these? Obviously, you like run a ICO casino.
Spot. He's in the same spot.
Yeah. Well, kind of going back to the entrepreneurial side of it, like, people coming into the space, they're wanting to build on this cool blockchain technology thing. I feel like all those people that think there's a Freerider problem are more like they're thinking in terms of equity. They're thinking about a VC, how a VC would think, or a startup founder would think, and they're thinking of it like the the cap table. Like you don't want to have some people that are dead weight and just free riders on your cap table. But Bitcoin is not a security or an equity cap table. It's a commodity, it's a currency, and you want your currency to have the widest possible distribution as possible. Whereas with a cap table, you kind of want to have it all concentrated. So they've got like more like a free rider fallacy, where they're just equating building on Bitcoin to be the same as launching their own coin. And then they're like, well, I could just do it on Ethereum and launch a token, and then I get them all, or I get 40% of them. And then there's none of these other people that are benefiting off of my work. And that's why I think most of these things are pseudo securities. And it would be great if there was proper, clear regulations and lines drawn in the sand. And like, you know, my friend right now is launching a company, and I was going to invest in his company like $25,000 because I do some angel investing sometimes, and I like to support my friends and stuff. And so he sent me over the contract.
Have fun staying poor, Brad.
Exactly. I should just keep it all in Bitcoin. It's true. Like I'm probably going to lose on every one of these investments except Bitcoin. But he sent me over the contract, and it's a SAFT. So it's a simple agreement for future tokens. I'm like, dude, aren't we talking about like you're launching a company? Like, why are you doing a SAFT? You don't need a SAFT. You don't need tokens. And he's like, oh yeah, we're not doing equity. We're doing tokens. I'm like, I'm not investing in that. Like, it's probably going to pump, but it's like, I would rather. I've tried to advise him against it, but he's not like a immoral person. He's a good person. He just thinks that this is the new thing to do. If you're going to launch a blockchain startup, you have to do tokens because of the DeFi bubble and because of all these other coins and tokens that have launched.
I mean, he might very well be correct. Like the thing is, it's going to be very hard to compete with other companies that have the funding that those tokens allow. So if you're going to make a DeFi app, which is not creating value because that's what DeFi apps don't do, then you have to compete on the size of your funding, basically, and maybe like other things like your community or whatever. But the funding that you have plays a very big part. And then someone else can just do the same thing and raise more funds than you. So you kind of have to optimize it. And you've seen that like Uniswap had problems when the sushi guys just said, you know what, we're going to do the same thing with a token. That's why Uniswap had no choice but to issue a token, right? Like they couldn't just have all the value siphoned away. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, and that's what happens in those bubbles. You can't. It's very hard to like start a value creating company in a space that is like a huge freaking bubble. Like, how do you do that exactly?
And it's
even
like
if you have the best intentions.
If you are a free markets guy or a woman, if you're listening to this, and you're like being intellectually honest about the arguments about why Bitcoin has value, then you can also put yourself in a place where you can think that the whole world can move to a model where startups can issue tokens instead of stocks, and then the stocks don't have value anymore and the tokens have the value because of the same reasons why people decided to value yap stones in that small yap island or whatever, or beaver pelts or whatever. It's just whatever we share as a shared hallucination of value becomes valuable. So maybe there is a way to rationalize startups doing tokens, but in a way it's kind of like that's why the regulations are there. And if you don't, I don't like to be encouraging people to be with heavy-handed regulations and all that. But if you don't have any kind of protections, then you have things like Ripple. It'll bubble up into a point where people are saying, oh, this is just like Bitcoin, so buy this instead. And then it's really just securities. It's just like a stock in a company that they're saying it's like a Bitcoin.
I guess that the world of altcoins taught me that there is some benefits to regulations, right? Because before that, I was very naive. I mean, I was like, yeah, you know what? The free market means you need zero regulation. I still think that it might have been better if they were allowed to just do their thing and people would just learn over time. Because, you know, if Ripple dies, there are going to be others. Like I bet there are some people who are just waiting for Ripple to disappear so that their scam can take the number 3 spots or whatever it is. But I don't know. I mean, I to be honest with you, I'm not an American, and this feels like a U.S. thing. I shouldn't have. I don't have like opinions on what the U.S. should do. They can do whatever they want. Obviously, it affects me, right? It affects everyone, but it's none of my business, to be honest. So,
do you think it makes sense to think about it? Because, and more so, obviously, we know Bitcoin is going to win. Most like any metric that you're looking at is pointing at Bitcoin as the leader and continues to have the Lindy effect and continues to grow hash power and mining data centers. Like, it's getting better. It's not completely decentralized, but it's getting better. More developers are coming online. There's more companies adopting Bitcoin like as payments. There's Paxful serving 5 million customers in Africa and India. Like, the people that are using cryptocurrency as money are not using stable coins. They're using Bitcoin, even still with all the stable coins. The people that are using stable coins are like the whales and the speculators.
I don't know. I think that the payment volume for both Bitcoin and stable coins is pretty low. Like all of those things you mentioned, where they're actually used for payments, I think it's pretty low.
It is low, but it's not like a coin XYZ is cheaper than Bitcoin to use to send, so then that's going to win payments. Like, even though Bitcoin is more expensive to use as money, it's still winning. It's still like 90% of all the volume between real people. I mean, like actual people using it for remittances, peer-to-peer payments and everything. Bitcoin is like 90% of it. Even what BitPay has stats and all these other payment processors, people are paying with Bitcoin. They're not paying with stable coins and ETH and Litecoin and all that stuff.
I think that so
even though the volume's low, like you're right, it is low.
Yeah. So it's hard. I don't want to. I can only say what it seems like to me, right? I don't want to talk for anyone else. I'm sure some people use Bitcoin, you know, as a matter of principle, but I think that seems like the majority of people that do use cryptocurrencies to pay for things, they have like 2 reasons for that. One reason could be just because they own a substantial amount of Bitcoin or whatever other coin, and they don't own anything else. So it's like it's literally easier for them to spend those Bitcoins because they don't have a bank account, right? Some of those people exist. They don't want to have a bank account. They only have Bitcoin. That's what they have. So that's what they spend. Those people exist, but it's not a lot, right? The other type is, I think, people who practically see it as the easiest way to get what they need. That could be for multiple reasons. Like maybe you don't, maybe you're in a country where you can't buy something unless you're paying with Bitcoin or whatever. And like, you know, the gift cards example with Paxful, you want to, for whatever reason, you want to acquire cheaper credit cards in a peer-to-peer market. Well, you literally can't use like credit card for that. That's impossible. Then the market won't work. So you have to use a cryptocurrency. But I think they're going to transition into stable coins. Like I think that they already probably have support for that. And I think that those kind of use cases, the thing with stable coins is that they don't necessarily have the longevity. So a stablecoin like USDT or USDC or whatever can disappear or start censoring transactions. That can happen at any time. So that's the issue that they have. But until that happens, if you're just doing, you know, if you're not holding them, you're just transacting with them, then you don't care. And it's obviously easier for you to use USDT than Bitcoin if you're not a Bitcoin holder. So I do think that for those edge cases, those are not very popular either, by the way. Those are pretty small, but for those cases, I think that stablecoins will become more popular actually than Bitcoin, as long as they exist. They will likely be attacked at least by regulations. Like I don't know if
Yeah,
the attacks succeed, but they will at least there will be attempts. So
yeah, the stable coins are just like a tool. They're just somebody else's dollars in someone else's bank account. You have the digital keys for it. Like, sure, no one can have your private keys to your stable coins, but they're not your dollars.
yeah,
So the else's dollars, and that someone else can be taken over by the regulators or the hostile government or whatever. So it's not like the same thing as holding your own Bitcoin and being sovereign with your own Bitcoin.
yeah.
And I guess what I meant was like it would be nice because stable coins and Bitcoin aren't the same asset and they don't really compete. But
Not at all.
there is muddiness in the market, especially for all these new billion people that are going to come in, thinking that stable coins are like Bitcoin and ETH and Ripple are like Bitcoin and Wi-Fi tokens and Yearn tokens and all this stuff. Like that's all like Bitcoin. I don't have like a fetish for regulation, but I just wish that there was a good narrative or a good effort by everybody to say like these things are different asset classes and Bitcoins are separate than stable coins and stable coins are separate than ethers and those are separate from, you know, ripples because now ripples are declared securities. So there is
Yeah.
a lot of difference in these assets. And like, why would we get triggered in one way about stablecoin usage? Because I get triggered. It's because people think that they're like, oh, well, stablecoins are winning the war against Bitcoin, and they're like, no, and because they ride on ETH mostly, then that means Ethereum's going to go to a quadrillion market cap or something like that. It's the same logic as Ripple with the $529 meme price. Just because the stablecoins transact on Ethereum doesn't mean that's going to make Ethereum the token valuable. I don't know if you got any insight on value accrual to token layers or anything.
Okay. There's a bunch of things to unpack there. I think when it comes to people thinking that stable coins or altcoins are better than Bitcoin, I mean, let them think. they'll they'll figure it out. They'll eventually figure it out. And it's sad. Like it's sad to see people because you know what's going to happen. It's sad to see people walk into these traps. But you can't like you can only show them the door, right? You can't force them to do anything, and that's how you learn. And I mean, I don't know, I learned that way sort of. Like I was first exposed to Bitcoin, but I was immediately exposed to the altcoins at the time. And I mean, I don't know, I thought maybe I was new, I didn't know what was going on. I thought, well, they seem similar, so I don't know, maybe I should get some and see what happens. You don't really like how is someone supposed to react to that? So I think a ton of people go through the altcoin stage and they step out of it, and that's is what it is. I'm not sure there's any other way to go around it. As far as value accrual goes, yeah, I think that's very naive to think that an increase in stablecoin usage will accrue to ETH's value. That's very naive, kind of childish, to be honest, because we have the history, we have the data. I don't like in the past I had to like pontificate about fundamentals, like make guesses and explain why. You don't have to do that anymore. You have the data. You can see, we had this transition between USDT being on Bitcoin's Omni layer thing. I don't know if people remember that. Some people might have completely missed that, but Tethers used to be on some sort of layer protocol on top of Bitcoin. That was the only way to transact with them. And honestly, it sucked. It was a very bad protocol. And ERC20 on top of Ethereum is just better. It's a better mechanism to transact USDT. Anyone who says otherwise is just probably never tried it or is lying. I don't know. So it's way better. And fairly quickly, within a few months, most of the volume moved over from Bitcoin to Ethereum and continued to grow exponentially on Ethereum. Like now it's way bigger than it ever was on Bitcoin. And the Ether price not only did not react to that, at the time the Ether price crashed very strongly. While you can see, like, I can't share the screen to show a chart because I don't have it in front of me, but you can see, I looked at it just a while ago. You could see, like, it looks like this, right? Like the the Tether volume on Ethereum grows, and in the same time, the Ether price just dumps, like 80% or whatever. So you really cannot claim that the value accrues. And you could, if it was true, then Ethereum should have been at its all-time highs right now, because the volume of Tether is larger than it ever was on anywhere. And it's just not how it works.
What's it called when you rationalize? I guess just rationalization. Like a lot of the Ethereum people use this argument to rationalize. I mean, their narratives change a lot, and they always steal memes from Bitcoin. Soon you'll be hearing Ethereum people say, Ethereum lets you be your own bank. But the rationalization about the stable coins, it was so funny because, like you said, when it was all on Omni, nobody cared. Bitcoiners weren't celebrating how the volume of Tether was picking up, and nobody cared about it. It wasn't any contributing factor to the price rise of Bitcoin. In fact, most people were saying Tether is a scam and Bitcoin is because it has Tether on it. But then when it switched over to Ethereum and the volume went nuts, partially because it was easier to integrate with ERC20 tokens, do trustless swapping and all that, cheaper to use than on the Bitcoin layer, on the Omni layer. It was definitely cheaper. Partly because of that.
Very little trustless swaps of USDT compared to there is now, but
on Uniswap now there is, but like it's never trustless.
Almost none.
Yeah, back then it wasn't. Decentralized exchanges weren't very popular, so it was mostly volume on exchanges. But obviously, like the market grew, so it makes sense that more stable coins are going to come in. But then, like, they started to use that narrative that look at all the volume on stable coins, because when you actually look at the volume transacted in the base layer tokens, BTC, EOS, ETH, LTC, BCH, all the base layer tokens that are trying to all compete as money, Bitcoin destroys them all by the layer of the token. Like that's why value accrues to a token, is if it becomes used as a store of value, and I feel like as a method of exchange, and then eventually a unit of account if it gets big enough. But none of these like people are using Ethereum. No, I shouldn't say none. Like some people are for sure. It's Ethereum developers and all that, and some investors are using Ethereum to value their investments and whatnot. But 90% of the volume in ETH, 90% or more of the volume on Ethereum is stable coins and Bitcoin, like wrapped Bitcoin. And so then they take that and say, oh, well, that means it's transacting more value than Bitcoin. But when you actually compare, like we used to compare the value of the Bitcoin transferred and the value of the ETH transferred, it's BCH has more value transferred than Ethereum does.
It's not even close.
The value accrues to the miners because the mining fees are skyrocketing on Ethereum. It's actually more expensive now to send. I paid like a $40 fee the other day to do a swap on Ethereum. I've never paid a fee that high on Bitcoin. And like people don't realize that, you can be patient with Bitcoin and you can put a lower fee. If you put a lower fee on Ethereum and try to be patient, it's just going to fail and you're going to lose the transaction fee. So you're just going to lose more money.
Yeah.
So people will to steel man that, there's apparently some good second layer scaling solutions coming up in Ethereum that may solve that problem. But before we end it, like this was supposed to be about Bitcoin 20K. We ended up shitting on all these other coins and stuff, but it's something that we have to have a conversation about because new people coming in are going to get sucked into this rabbit hole. What do you think about the likely potential of the second layer scalings of Bitcoin or of ETH combined with this 2-year sort of like magic plan that they have for advanced cryptography that they don't even know how to do?
Well, I feel like, for kind of for completion, I have to say that when it comes to the fee thing, there's a plan going on Ethereum to change just the way that fees work. And I don't know if it happens or not, but there's definitely a plan to do it and change fees from going to miners to basically that you just burn them. And if you do that, you could argue that an increase in usage in Ethereum would create more ethers destroyed, and hence more value accrued to ethers. You could argue that. I don't know if it actually happens, if it actually becomes reality, or when. And also, even if it does, I think it ignores the larger point, which is that if transactions on Ethereum become too expensive, then USDT and others will just migrate somewhere else because there's no reason for them to be on Ethereum. They might have to be on Ethereum specifically for DeFi related stuff, but that's not the majority of the volume. The majority of the volume is between exchanges. So for that,
I guess
there's no reason to use Ethereum.
You could just make wrapped stable coins. Like they're pretty much just wrapped dollars now.
Yeah.
You could just make wrapped dollars.
Yeah. And it's already happening. I think about 25 people don't know that, but about 25% of the USDT volume is on Tron. Tron, the joke coin, which is the Chinese Dogecoin. 25% of Tether volume is there because why not? Because all exchanges support it and it's free and instant. So if you're a trader, it's better for you to use it on Tron. It's literally better. There's no reason for you to use it on Ethereum unless you have to. So that's like Ethereum doesn't have.
Do you have any thoughts though?
To keep those there.
Like, I agree with
on
you.
On the second layer stuff.
Yeah, on the second layer stuff. Like, do you think that they can get ETH2 launched in a way that actually delivers on what they're promising?
I think, well, the launch of Ethereum 2 is very far away. It's like even the optimistic assumptions are talking about 2 to 3 years. Because what we have right now is the phase 0 thing, and it's not, you can't use it.
You just lock your coins up and then
help
the Ponzi scheme rise faster because the supply is constrained.
Yeah, which so far didn't help, but yeah, yes. Maybe it will. It might. But the thing that actually works is not expected, like even by the optimists, is not expected to be launched in the next 2 years. So I think the answer to that is very clearly no. Like that's not going to be ready anytime soon, and I don't think they hit the optimistic estimates either because they never do. The phase 0 of ETH 2.0 was supposed to launch in 2018 or early 2019. I mean, in DevCon 2018, they said that, like, Vitalik didn't give a date, but the other devs there interviewed and said that they would estimate that probably by the end of the year of 2018, it would probably be out, if not then early 2019. They just don't know, and it's a huge change. No one knows. I can't imagine that it will be before 2 years from now, and could be much longer.
Do you think that, because I'm trying to think of like the risks for Bitcoin, and like, I don't want to be wrong, so I want to have hedges against what I believe is going to happen. And so I sometimes will think about like how Bitcoin can fail and try to protect against that for my personal investments. But like the assumption for me about Ethereum was just that it was just going to fail. That was my default assumption. Like I assumed Bitcoin was going to succeed. Yeah. And now it's like, wow, okay, it didn't matter that they weren't fuel. Yeah. It didn't matter that they weren't dApps. It didn't matter they weren't immutable. Like none of that stuff mattered. They're trying to get on the path of immutability. They hard forked recently with a bug or something, but they'll say that was a
they're trying
chain.
To say that they're on the path of immutability. I'm not sure they're actually trying to be on the path, but trying to say
they're trying to make it appear like they're on, this is a plan and that it's okay that it's taken a bit longer, whatever. And the market is clearly not like treating it poorly.
Yep.
Whether that's people are like, there's a buyers of last resort that have massive bags that don't want to see it go down below certain levels. Or maybe there's actual demand by new people coming in and investors and stuff. Maybe there is actual demand for it. But at what point do you think that the companies that are running these stable coins and the dApps and the games that they've spent all this time and money building that are now broken because of the fees are way too high for opening up packs of cards and stuff? What has to happen? Because I thought in the bubble of the DeFi bubble in the summer that it just was going to show that Ethereum was just totally broken, because there was like you can't like roll a dice and pay $5 for your game. So dApps don't work on Ethereum right now, and nobody's adopting the second layer stuff as far as I can see. And 2.0 is just seems like it's a huge technical headache for anybody trying to upgrade to this new system. So what has to happen for Ethereum to finally just fall apart and people to switch to do something else?
Yeah. Well, if we're honest, anyone who was around for the Ethereum ICO and didn't invest made a mistake, made a huge mistake. And there were a lot of voices back then of people in Bitcoin who said that, it was a scam, it was whatever, it will never launch, it will never this, will never that. And they were largely wrong. They were right about some things, like some of the things that Ethereum promised are physically impossible, but the larger point is that it didn't matter. Like, yeah, they're not possible, but who cares? And I think that was true for a lot of the 2017 stupid ICO ideas, like an Uber on the blockchain and those kind of dumb ideas. Yeah, they couldn't work for scalability reasons, but they also couldn't work because they were ridiculously dumb. So like, I think that people saw, well, it's true that Ethereum can't support that, but even if it could, no one would use it, and it doesn't actually matter. And
I mean, that stuff was on Bitcoin too in the early days. We had like bit stocks and all these things that were kind of like interesting ideas, but that failed because they were just dumb ideas, not because it was Bitcoin or whatever. It was just some ideas are really dumb, and in a bubble, when it's permissionless and trustless, you can just launch a coin on Ethereum, then you will do it. And sometimes you'll be raising money illegally and get in trouble. Sometimes you'll get away with it. But regardless, the market proved over 2018-19 that most of this stuff was turds and it wasn't worth anything.
Yeah.
But so you said, that doesn't matter, right? Because
here. And exactly. And I think, I think for Ethereum, I don't think it's going away anytime soon, right? I mean, look, Ethereum is in my opinion, for most of the things it's used for, they're just dumb projects that obviously don't create value, and obviously people would not be interested in them in 6 months from now. That's for most of the thing that happen on Ethereum. And these projects are not going to look for an alternative because they don't need an alternative. They're not going to exist. But there are some that are going to stay, like stablecoins, for example. They have a very real use case. They're not going to disappear unless they're forced to disappear. And stablecoins, I think, will start to partially migrate to other chains if Ethereum fees become too high. Just because it's very different than Bitcoin. When fees become high in Bitcoin, if BTC doesn't migrate away, that's not an option. But and all of those wrapped Bitcoins on other chains, they're not the same thing. Like they have their place. They're not the same thing. Like they're not a replacement for Bitcoin. Bitcoin has to exist there in order for those wrapped tokens to exist. And some people are not going to choose to use whatever wrapped tokens there are. So Bitcoin stays on Bitcoin, and people, if the fees go up, it means that people are willing to pay the higher fees. That's what it means. On Ethereum, you have just a ton of different use cases. It can be stable coins, then suddenly CryptoKitties, then whatever. And it doesn't make sense for Tether users to compete with CryptoKitty users on the price of including a transaction. It just doesn't make sense. Why would they want to compete with them they have nothing to gain from doing that. So it's very trivial for stablecoins to move to other chains. They already do. Like Tether exists on many chains, and Tron is actually quite popular. So if the need arises, they will just, they don't even have to flip a switch. The infrastructure is there. People will just naturally flock to the other chain. And once they move, they're not coming back. Like, it's not like you've seen the same with Omni. When they move from Omni to Ethereum, they're not coming back when the Bitcoin fees go down. Like, it's over, because people will see that the other alternatives are just better because they're instant and free. So like, why would you ever go back to Ethereum? Unless you have to use Ethereum for whatever reason, but most people don't. So I think
But
that's
technically,
where you're going to
though,
start to see people leave Ethereum. When you have like a value in the product and they lose money by staying there, then they'll leave, pretty much.
Right. Like if there's a better option, whatever, if DM launches, like Facebook's project launches or whatever, and people just use
there
that.
is a better option. There's a better option right now. There's just no incentive to move. Like moving is it's a step that you have to take. Like funds that are trading are going to have to like change their systems to do it. There's no motivation to do it right now. But if they start competing with CryptoKitties transactions or DeFi farming transactions or whatever, then they'll start doing it for sure.
So, sure, I agree there that they're like, hopefully, I mean, maybe it's Bitcoin or Lightning might even take, or Liquid even might take some of that stablecoin volume, because I feel like the security trade-offs of Liquid are not different than the security trade-offs of Ethereum. It's kind of not decentralized, but neither is really Ethereum. And there's no Liquid coin, so I'd rather see things on Liquid. But regardless of that,
yeah.
What do you think about the technical thing? Like, will anybody start, because it's not scalable. Ethereum 1.0 is not scalable. We see that now with DeFi just having that little bubble. It just totally wrecked the fee market there on Ethereum and made things slow down. And if Uniswap Ponzi's don't work when you can't sell and buy because your every second transaction's failing and there's too much slippage and stuff. So they need scalability for sure. But the roadmap seems extremely complicated and very naive and wishful thinking. Like, I don't know if Vitalik was joking or not when he posted that gigantic flow chart, and at the very bottom it's like advanced cryptography, experimental research with no progress being done on it. Like, does ETH 2.0 really require these advanced cryptography breakthroughs to scale, like technically?
I'm not familiar with the latest on Ethereum 2.0 technology. The thing changes all the time. It doesn't exist, but it changes all the time. I'm really not familiar with the latest on there. I think that and that's really just my intuition, and just with talks with people, I feel like there are not many like real bets being put on Ethereum 2.0 as an actual successful alternative to ETH 1.0. I think that people are, if at all, they're more bullish on like other second layer solutions on Ethereum, like because ETH 2.0 arguably isn't even second layer. We can argue about the terminology there, but they have like other ideas, like the optimistic rollups and ZK rollups and all kind of stuff that people are building. And I think that people seem to be more bullish on that. It will be ready sooner, and it has some interesting properties. But I think, so I think, they'll find a way. But I don't think they'll be able to compete with the truly centralized databases of the world. So, and something like USDT, I just don't see why. Like, USDT is going to support everything. They don't care. They're going to have, they have like small teams building implementations for each and every possible chain you can think of. And they'll just support everything and let the market decide. And then the question is like, what is the market going to adopt? And like right now, if Ethereum stopped right now, if you pull the trigger right now, Ethereum dies. Where is Tether going to go? Obviously, in my opinion, it's obviously to Tron. I know it sounds like a joke, but it's true, because that's where the infrastructure is right now. Like actual exchanges, big ones, already support USDT on Tron. So if you have to
Binance, like Binance Smart Chain has got the ability to ride that stuff out too.
Yeah, but Binance isn't as well supported across exchanges. So like Tron is actually supported across almost all major exchanges, not the American ones, but all the other ones. So you can right now transact USDT between them. And
what about
so
Liquid?
I mean, Liquid is, I think Liquid is interesting technically, but again, there's the infrastructure problem there. Like there are very few exchanges. Bitfinex supports it, and that's it, and a few other smaller ones.
So
But
we need to
Tron,
see that
it's
grow
funny,
then.
but Tron is actually like USDT on Tron is actually supporting a lot of large exchanges. So like, if that's what you want to do, then it's like an instant solution.
Yeah, and it's funny because that is like the most main use case for these stable coins. It's speculating on altcoins. It's not actually like the Latin American user that's trying to pay for their rent or get exposure to like a stable coin versus their hyperinflating national currency. And so it's not like those are the people that this DeFi stuff's being built for. It's being built for traders and crypto speculators.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't matter. Like I do want to see Libra's coin launch, like Facebook's DM thing launch. I'd love to see that. I want to see how useful it is. I want to see what it can do.
I'm happy for it to launch, but I just don't like, how is it ever going to compete with Tether? Like nothing can compete with Tether unless Tether is shut down. That's
what I mean. Like Tether is going outside of the regulations. So Tether is like a tool for crypto traders and stuff, but the moment that it starts, well, it's already been used to like evade capital controls and stuff like that. A lot of like Hong Kong citizens and stuff are starting to use Tether Sherpas to like get them out of the Hong Kong dollar and like the Chinese yuan and stuff, where they were just previously always using mostly Bitcoin, but now they're using more Tether. But I feel like as the price rockets on Bitcoin, like I'd love to see some recent data because I've been looking in the summer and I haven't looked since then. And my theory was that like once Bitcoin started to really take off, we broke the all-time high. All these people that were evading capital controls and trying to fly from their unstable currencies into Tether and stablecoins, we're going to just put it all into Bitcoin because it's like a good investment. Why would you hold it in Tether when it can be just seized?
Yeah, if you're holding for a long period of time, then I mean, Bitcoin definitely has that sort of advantage there. On the other hand, obviously, it's volatile, so some people don't want that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that like Bitcoin is just a different animal. I think it's appealing to a different kind and set of people.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see how it goes because ETH 2.0 is going to have quite a long road. Ripple recently having a long road down, and hopefully ETH will follow.
No, I don't look. I don't wish for ETH to die. I think that there are many nice people there. I mean, if it does die, I hope they have fun staying poor. I'm not. I'm all in favor of them. No hard feelings. I think that Bitcoin is just something else, and altcoins. Here's the real difference, and I think Bitcoin being like its main innovation is that it's an asset that had its rules made up once, and it's not going to change. And the fact that the rules are known and not going to change allows people to focus on creating value everywhere else. Altcoins are the opposite. The idea and the point and the goal of altcoins is to keep changing the rules all the time so that you can extract value from the market just because you understood the new rules before the next guy did, and you have this informational advantage there. That's what altcoins are for. And once that arbitrage closes down, then you start a new altcoin and you keep changing the rules all the time so that you can keep extracting value that way. So Bitcoin allows people to create value. Altcoins allow them to extract value from the market that's already there. Now, some people want that. If that's what you're looking for, you're going to find that on altcoins. You're very likely to lose, but maybe you're going to be the asshole taking everyone's money. That's possible. Bitcoin is something else. Bitcoin is supposed to be good money. And when you have a good money, then people can go out and create value elsewhere, and that's the point.
Well, but when I say go down,
that's what they want.
I really do hope ETH goes way down. I don't hide it. I hope they get wrecked. I hope everybody that has ETH right now buys Bitcoin and realizes that these are different assets. And just because DeFi may succeed and maybe Wall Street somehow gives up their centralized control and their walled garden and puts it all on Ethereum blockchain for some reason, and then quadrillions of dollars of derivatives are going to be laid to bear in the public on the blockchain for sure. Okay. I still don't think that's going to accrue value to the ETH token. And when Bitcoin does eventually, like if it succeeds and proves its value as a reserve asset and like a competitor to gold, ETH's not going to follow it to Mars. ETH's going to follow it maybe to the moon and then probably, or maybe it'll hit the atmosphere and then fall back down. But I don't think that these altcoins are going to be able to like break through the chasm like Bitcoin, the BTC asset will. The Ethereum network, altcoin networks, of course, they're not going to die. These are open source technologies. It's clear now that they're not going to die. A lot of us that were saying, oh, these are all just scams, they're going to die, no one's going to want to use them. Clearly, that's not the case. But the assets themselves, Bitcoin has the chance to be $1 million, $2 million, $3, $4, $5, $20 million of Bitcoin if we live in a world of hyperinflation where central banks just don't stop printing. ETH doesn't compete with that. And so in BTC terms, I don't see how it doesn't go down over 5-10 years. I don't know if ETH's going to exist in 10 years. Maybe it will, but if Bitcoin still exists in 10 years, ETH price is going to be way down in terms of Bitcoin. Maybe it'll be up to $2,000 or $5,000, but Bitcoin's going to be like 10 or 20 million or something, maybe.
Yeah, I think the ETH BTC rate is pretty much doomed long term. Like there's no saving that. It just can't compete.
So you just hope they have fun staying poor in Satoshis.
I hope for their sake that I'm just wrong, man. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with them just look, I'm happy when someone else makes money. I'm happy. I don't want them to lose. I don't gain any happiness from them losing. Do their thing. If somehow manages to keep up the pace, good for them. I just can't imagine it happening. If I happen to be in a short position in ETH, then yes, I want them to lose. But that's the only time.
All right. Well, that's a good diplomatic, inclusive way to end it.
Yeah.
So anyways, thanks, man, for coming on.
Yeah.
Obviously, people were commenting in the chat. I think everybody knows you already on Twitter. People are saying they were glad to see you back on Twitter.
Because of the sunglasses. If I didn't have my sunglasses on, they wouldn't know it's me.
Yeah, they wouldn't know. So for anybody that's maybe not aware of your Twitter or your how to find you, what do they do? HaveFunStayingPoor.com?
Yeah. The best way to find me is to go to HaveFunStayingPoor.com. Easy to remember. Easier to spell than my name is.
Yeah,
just
it is.
The best way.
Good marketing. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Udi.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
See you guys.